All right, so and here we're good to go.
All right. Yeah. So I'm Dan Cecilia. I graduated in 2017 with my MBA from Bonos. And I started out, I moved out to Chicago and I started out at TD Ameritrade working for Thinkorswim, which some of you guys might be familiar with. And then I did that for about 2 years, bounced around a couple roles within that firm. And a couple months ago, I recently took a job at a Fintech firm doing hedge fund management software. So the name of the firm is Enfusion, and it's basically a cloud-based platform for hedge fund firms to do all of their trading and everything from their front office trading to their back office accounting, fund services type, I guess, functions, all within one platform. So this is more of an institutional side system. So with that, it's highly complex. There's a lot of moving parts. You can see here, a company's been around for about 10 years. They started out as a consulting firm and then developed this product, this software product. So the main functions of the platform are what we call an OEMS, which is order execution and management system. So that would be like your front end trading systems, right? And these are pretty big clients. So they trade sovereign debt, they trade a lot of total return swaps, they trade swaptions, a lot of like very highly complex, stuff that I don't even understand, but what you would consider like alternative investments, private equities, warrants, let me think, CDSs, credit default swaps, obviously. But yeah, all institutional products, and they trade all around the world and 24/7 basically. So this system basically organizes their trades, connects to all the brokers, connects to the exchanges, stages the orders based on, basically what you would consider like algorithmic rules, but they're more compliance-based rules, order sizing, stuff like that. So a little bit different than what you would consider the retail space and what you would consider, I guess, traditional fund management. But yeah, it's been a learning experience, but it's a good space to be in, I would say, as far as just getting exposure to a different side of the industry. It's a cloud-based system, so it integrates it's a software, so it integrates across, the internal fund systems as well as third parties as like prime brokers or exchanges. The order execution, we integrate with like Bloomberg as far as market data feeds. It's a highly dynamic system. It's hard to explain without showing you. Unfortunately, I can't show you it today, but maybe sometime in the future I can.
So we talk a lot about fintech, and how would you describe, what is your definition of fintech? I guess it's just the integration of new technology.
I really would describe it as software, like financial software.
Okay.
So, a lot of the traditional functions, like we do have a lot of accountants within our organization. I'm on product consulting, so I kind of interact with the clients and teach them how to use the software. But basically, it's the intersection of finance and technology from a high level. And then if you drill down, that can go into different buckets. It could be execution trading systems. It can be, accounting systems. It can be middle office compliance systems. It just so happens that this particular organization I work for has created that all in one software. So the way the software is set up is, like I said, in the front end, it's an order execution trading system. So think of like Thinkorswim, where you place your orders, except it's not as easy as retail. It's more, you send it off to different prime brokers. I mean, there's thousands of prime brokers. You got Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, the big names, and then you have prime brokers over in Europe, prime brokers over in Asia, and those are like the servicers to the hedge fund, I guess is the best way to describe it. In other words, if a hedge fund needs to locate shares or needs to place a trade, they would be like the counterparty to that, in other words. And you know, otherwise, like when you do trades through SIMM, it's kind of, you just place it through you know, a retail brokerage account. I think you guys have right? Yeah. This is more like direct to exchange, or like through a broker that can locate the product you're trying to trade, or, you know, take the other side. So within this,
sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get my head around it. So what it's doing is replacing, or streamlining, maybe is a better word, streamlining a lot of these steps that used to be done manually or on the phone, you know, find this deal, find this. This does it much more quickly.
Right. And like, that's the whole point, is basically what happens is all these trades get placed, and depending on who you're sending it to, you have, you know, I guess the ecosystem. I'll give you a basic overview of how I understand the ecosystem. You have your order execution, you know, your exchanges, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have your fund admins. Your fund admins are supposed to be like sort of like the eye over your fund, like keeping track of the valuations of what you have in your fund, kind of keeping you in check in regards to who your investors are.
For our purposes, that's Mike Johnson. So he just clicked on. So that's who our fund overseer is. Yes.
So so you have your admin, you have your prime broker, and you have your exchanges. So you send your trades to your exchanges, and they, you know, they process them, send them back. The prime broker gets looped in, and the admin gets looped in, and all of those parties, and there's a few others I'm missing, but we'll just simplify it. All of those parties need they need to reconcile all of those trades. So the way you can think of this is, my system, Enfusion, sits in the middle of all that. So it places the trades, receives them, communicates that to the admin, communicates that to the prime broker, and makes sure that those are all squared away. So it kind of sits in the middle of that whole entire ecosystem. So basically the way those files look is they're Excel files, right? They're just like data sets. They have columns that have certain parameters on them, you know, trade date, trade ID, buy, sell, swap agreement, non-swap agreement, etc. And each prime broker has their own different data set and how they process it. And on the back end, there's a database. You set up a database job. It sends out at 4 p.m. Eastern time, or, you know, whatever, 12 p.m. Greenwich Meridian time. I mean, we're sending these all over the world. So it's kind of like, you know, based on where the fund is and what they want. But each party has a different sort of data set. So where our system kind of comes in is like, we connect to those prime brokers, we receive those data sets, we match it off on our system and on the admin side, and send those trades off each day and rec them out, basically. And that's all done automated. And then, you know, along with that, once those trades come back into the system, because there's certain workflows, right? There's a bunch of different workflows. There's, you know, wipe and loads, where the trade comes in and it's sent off to the prime broker, we wipe it, and then in the morning, once the prime broker signs off and says, hey, this is matching, we bring it back into the system and we upload it to our portfolio management system. So I'll give you a basic overview of the main function of the main different functions, right? So you can see this slide, right? Yeah, okay. So it's basically one solution for a complex industry. You can it's pretty self-explanatory. It's automated, integrates with one data set, like I said, between all those parties. And it's supposed to simplify all this reporting. So you got your execution management on the left, execution orders, you know, placing the trades. Then you have your portfolio management and valuation. So once those trades are placed, you create a position. So you have an active position in your funds. And some of these funds have, you know, 5 or 6 different funds within them. So though they can break it down by fund, they can break it down by book, by trader. They have the opportunity to look at their portfolio and kind of segment it off and understand where everything's going. And then also perform valuation and risk metrics, exposure metrics. You know, these are like based on net asset value or percentage of net asset value. Along with that comes your accounting and reconciliation. So that there's an accounting system within there, and the portfolio management system and the accounting general ledger side is supposed to match. Now, this is where it gets kind of complex, and I don't want to get totally into it because I even don't understand it because I'm not in the accounting department here. But basically, when you're trading products like credit default swaps, or you're trading products that have multiple cash flows, there's, you know, different accruals and different, I guess, cash flow schemes on those products. So I guess cash flow accruals on those products. And the way those are accounted for are sometimes mismatched between what the prime broker admin or what the admin has and what's in our system. So we kind of relay that, or a fund accountant would relay that to us, and they would have to book adjustment trades. So the adjustment trades would create those missing cash flows in the portfolio side, and then you rec it off against the accounting reconciliation side, general ledger side. So that's kind of that middle part there, from portfolio management to reconciliation, is like, it's kind of like a constant real-time flow. In other words, it's supposed to keep track of where, like, your exposures, what's, you know, market values on your portfolio side, but also keep track of the accounting, what accounts they're booked in, where the cash flow accruals are going, et cetera. So that becomes kind of complex, and that's where a lot of my time spent, is just like creating reports and digging into the portfolio management side and making sure those kind of rec out, especially at the end of the month. Now, the fund services data side, I don't have much interaction with fund services, but basically that was what you can think of as like a catered consulting side for our funds. So the whole industry of hedge funds now is moving toward very, very streamlined, very, very low overhead, more investing in their technology stack to streamline their workflows. A lot of times it's a 5-man shop, and they third party out a lot of their processes. So all they might want to do is analyze trades or analyze positions, and they don't want to worry about creating data sets and creating an accounting department. And so they'll have their fund admins do that. So a lot of times our clients will have fund admins call us and say, hey, you know, we need these reports sent out at X time. And that's kind of what the fund services does. But like I said, I don't have much interaction with them yet. So that's kind of like a basic overview. And then obviously we have a data hosting site. So all of their trades are hosted on our cloud-based server. So here's the order execution management side. What it does, basically, there's something called the fixed connectivity. And the fixed connectivity is the financial information exchange. That's what it stands for. So that's what all of the exchanges use as far as communicating to brokers and exchanges what's going on. And you can actually look this up if you want to type in and Google after this something called a fix parser. You can look at all the tags and like what the code looks like when these exchanges send trades. So there'll be like something like tag 48. Tag 48 is trade type, or tag 60 is by the product type or instrument type, etc. So those come across as like raw text files, and that's like what's going on in the back end. That's like the communication code between exchanges and brokers, along with like the algos and what the brokers use the algos to route those out. So, you know, within our system, we have direct broker connectivity. They can specify what they want to, you know, what on their order they want to see. So if you can see these pictures here, that's what like active orders would look like. That top one, I don't know if it's kind of hard to explain, but it'd be basically this one right here. So those are all active orders ready to be filled. So you can see these blue, like something partially filled being staged here. And then this column is like a compliance check. So this is a very interesting thing. I'm actually getting trained up on this right now. So these funds have compliance officers, right? And these compliance officers have to create rules for what they can and cannot trade, and what the size of their positions they can and cannot place are. So you can't have like a trader go in and, you know, be rogue basically and place an order that's 80% of the net asset value of the fund and basically blow up the fund, right? There's like these checks in place. Now our system allows us to create these rules that the compliance officer specifies, and these are all like logic-based rules. So if position X is greater than 10% of net asset value of fund A, reject order. Basically, it'd be like a simplified approach to how these are placed. So those will pop up if a trader tries to go in and do something. For example, an interesting example could be, I was working on a fund earlier. They have a restricted list of stuff they can't trade. So they have something called an ESG fund, right? So an environmental sustainable fund. So on the restricted list, these is part of the compliance rules. On the restricted list, they can't trade tobacco products. They can't trade oil. They can't trade companies that have poor governance, etc. So that's kind of an example of the way you can set up certain instruments. It's a really interesting system in that aspect where, typically you think of placing an order, you go and you buy 100 shares of Apple, boom. Well, with these guys, it's, if I want to buy 100,000 shares of Apple, I got to make sure that it doesn't breach 10% of my entire holdings. It doesn't, it kind of lines up with the rules that we placed for trading for the fund. So it's really, really nuanced and complex. And on the back end side of this is all logic based. And this is something that I'm learning right now, and it's kind of fast paced. So I didn't have much experience with like JavaScript, and I do a lot of JavaScript coding now. Basic stuff like if then functions. So that gives you kind of a little glimpse of how that would work, and what type of, I guess, when you think of like algo or whatever, that's kind of how that works. It's just basic logic. It's rules, in other words. I guess down here you could see these are hot buttons, so you can route. These are all direct routes to brokers. So this would be to, you can't see it, but this will be to like Bank of America. So they would route it to that Bank of America algo, and Bank of America has a setup for that. This is Goldman Sachs's, and this is Morgan Stanley's, and these are like dark pools. In other words, this is what you would think of. Some of them are, and this is like what you think of as the dark pool algos or whatever that you hear about. But yeah, we kind of integrate directly with those prime brokers that have their algo set up.
And if they don't pick one, it just goes to the best price, or how does it select, or do they have?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not. It's hard to describe. They don't have to pick one, but they typically do. I mean, a lot of them use EMSX, which is Bloomberg. So like some of them use like Bloomberg's algo. Some of them use different, like these are electronic orders too. You can also fill with the voice order, which is right here, which is kind of like manual, right? That's like what you would think of as a traditional order. Mm-hmm. Electronic orders are more like algo based, the way, from a high level. You still have your basic rules like your limit and market orders, your time good till canceled or day orders. This would be like your electronic routing details. So the strategy, this is where you see like execution is algo, right? So if you see that right here, and then the strategy is volume weighted average price. And that's like that's what VWAP is, right? That's why like when people talk about VWAP, they want to get executed at the volume weighted average price because it's like a better execution across that algo, in other words. So that's where like a lot of people talk about that, but I don't think many understand that it kind of goes into how the order is being placed, right? And that's why it's so important to watch the open and the close each day, because if you notice, that's where most of the trading's done. And you can, and like, we went through a whole like training session on this, and basically Credit Suisse was the first one to kind of come up with a VWAP algo. And all they did was take the volume weighted average price of like the morning opening orders. So like, in other words, they would create this algo that reads like the volume weighted average price and however that's calculated. And then their algo would execute at like the best bid on that based on that VWAP algo. So that's why like whoever had that best technology, best algo was getting, you know, the best fill. So that's part of like the strategy. There's a few others, and I'm not totally too familiar with them, but you guys can look into that. And if you're really interested, you can look into like Credit Suisse VWAP algo. They were the first in the industry to do it, but a lot of other brokers have kind of come up with their own now. Moving on to like the portfolio management side, you know, this would be like more of your, I guess, just your overview of your positions, right? So we have like 6 million listed instruments in there, which is probably more now. It processes corporate actions, dividends, you know, all the corporate actions on these instruments. And then you have your market data. So your spot prices, yielding credit curves, FX rate. So vol surfaces, that's where you get into like these really complex products like swaptions or, you know, credit default swaps. They have these things, you know, the way these are valued are based on the Black-Scholes model, but they have different like volatility curves that they price the cash flows off of. It's really, I don't even understand it. Like, you know what I mean? I just know, I see it in my system and see how it's being calculated. Some of the more experienced people at my firm are like in there doing the calculations, but these are how some of these more complex products get priced. And you could use like Black-Scholes or some other model, but they can all specify that in the valuation side of this platform. You know, we integrate with real-time pricing. So a lot of our clients use Reuters or Bloomberg. Bloomberg, obviously you guys have a Bloomberg terminal, I think still. You guys still have it or no?
We do, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you have your Reuters Econ terminal, and those are all data providers for the funds, and we integrate with those data providers so that they can see the market time prices, real-time pricing feeds in there. And there's a few others too. There's like FactSet and stuff like that. And then getting into more of the strategy. So each of these funds might have a different strategy. So that would be like this picture right here. So that might be like the credit strategy, and under the credit strategy, they have different traders, and this trader's trading an IBM credit, as Citi credit or whatever that may be. And it basically organizes the strategies they're going after, because at a high level, you know, what are they doing? They're coming up with a thesis on the market, and they're trying to, you know, place bets based on what their expectations are. And in order to organize that, we have different segments that they can tag with different keywords, the trades, and segment them off to different strategies, right? I mean, I never really go into the valuation risk side of this, but basically you can perform what if scenarios, you know, value at risk, some of the more, I guess, standard risk metrics risk departments use to kind of keep track of their portfolio. I'm not too familiar with this side, so I kind of just skip past it. Let's see here. Yeah, so this just goes into real-time, a little bit more of the real-time pricing stuff, and just kind of, it's really customizable at the end of the day. So they can drill down, they can create, so here you'll see your strategy, right? Credit, global growth, long, short equity. And then under that, they can tag their different trades and kind of segment them off. It'd be like a grouping in Thinkorswim or some other basic retail platform you use. They can kind of group their positions based on strategy within their portfolio and see that kind of how that's performing real time with an aggregate total up at the top here. And then this is the general ledger accounting side. So, you know, this would be like your basic fund accounting level. There's an entire department, and that's part of like the fund services segment that I don't really work directly with, but I communicate with frequently on stuff that I'm not too familiar with. I'm not the best accountant, so I'm kind of not going to be able to drill down into some of the more aspects of how this gets posted. But in general, you're keeping track of like your cash flow accruals. You know, some of these people have, or some of these funds have to make adjustment trades, so they need to book those in certain accounts, or just at the end of the month tie out their income statement so that they know, you know, where they stand as far as, you know, how well they're doing. And that's kind of this part of the system. In in a high level sense, I can give you kind of the four main functions would be your order execution management system, your portfolio management system, your risk, and your general ledger. So that's like the four high level main functions of this platform. So it's an all-in-one, so it's cloud-based, so it's all in one, and it kind of updates that in real time. And like I said before, it sits in the middle between all of those functions of the financial markets, you know, the exchange, the prime broker, the admins. And then you're able to generate reports off that and kind of automate sending those out to your investors, because, you know, that's another thing too, is just keeping updating your investors so that they know what's happening with their investments, you know. So that's another aspect of this. Yep.
And you guys are all like, about how many people work for you?
We have about 500 globally now. So we have offices in Dublin, London, Hong Kong, Brazil, and Chicago and New York. And we just started adding a bunch of new employees because this is actually a great time for hedge funds to be launching, because there's so much volatility. That's what hedge funds do, is they trade volatility. And like I said, the general trend in the industry is automation, is reducing overhead. They really don't even, they might need one trader now. They don't need 12 traders on a desk. So they're really looking for software solutions to take care of all these back office functions, you know, and you see that in general banking too. So that's why I would describe it as like fintech, because you're kind of working in all aspects. You know, you have your accounting, but you're really working in software. It's really understanding how software works. And that's why like fintech has become such a buzzword, but there's so many nuances to it. There's so many different areas, but in general, it's just financial software, you know? And
when COVID hit, how has that affected you guys? I mean, is it like, you're working from home, obviously, most of the time.
So COVID hit us, and I mean, it was interesting because our Hong Kong office was already working from home, because they were hit earlier, but they also were hit with the student protests. So some of them couldn't get to work. So, I mean, we have laptops we have great tech. So, I mean, they just give us a laptop. I set up my own monitor at home, and it's pretty flexible in that aspect. So, I mean, COVID hit, they said, go work from home, and we kind of figured it out from there. But some of our global offices were already working from home, and some of our software devs are kind of remote too. That's kind of a side note that I'll kind of hit on if anybody wants to ask questions, because I've interviewed for a bunch of other different companies that are in the fintech space, and a lot of them, and I can talk about this later, but a lot of them don't have offices. A lot of them are all remote-based work, which is very interesting. And that's why I encourage you to get some type of, I guess, just tech knowledge or coding knowledge. Like, it's just a weird environment now. It's just like kind of dynamically changing. You not only need to understand basic finance, but you need to understand software. You need to understand, you know, what a client needs in that aspect. So you really do need to understand tech, and you don't need to be a software dev, but you should definitely look to get exposure in that area. As far as what jobs you're applying for, if you want to be in this space, obviously. And then, just moving along here with the third-party integration, this is what I talked about before. Like, this is where the fun admins come in. In this diagram right here, this is what I was talking about before. Here's our system right in the middle. You're sending it out to your executing brokers. You're getting back your fills. We're sending these to the fund admin. We're sending these to the prime broker. The prime broker receives them and sends them back. The fund admin receives them and sends them back. And that all needs to rec off. That all needs to match right in our system, right? So before it was like really, complex, but now we just sit in the middle and we kind of monitor everything. We kind of just record everything here. And that's like T+1 reconciliations, end-of-day allocations of trades, which I end up sending out a lot of. And that's where I talked about, like, that's what the data sets look like. They're Excel spreadsheets with all the trade details that get automatically sent out and matched in a database with the prime broker and with the fund admin. And like I said before, hold on. this is exactly what the system looks like, right? This is exactly where we sit in the entire ecosystem of this industry. We're right in the middle here, automating everything, because these are like the kind of key components. This is like an overview of the fund services. They do a lot of the reconciliations, a lot of the accountings. Like I said, these funds started just to keep overhead low. They started just hiring third parties to keep track of all this stuff for them. So like we become their operations, right? A lot of their operations is third partied out. It's not, it's not internal at these funds. So you might have 3 to 10 fund, people running the fund, but their entire operations might be third partied out, or, in that aspect. So that we do a lot of that. And like I said, I'm not too familiar with this side, but that's kind of an overview of what that would be. This is kind of more of a we have this system called Enfusion Visual Analytics, and the client can buy this basically, and it will give them visual overviews. This is what you would think of like a Tableau, I guess, or like just what you would, basic Excel visualization, but it's through a database, and it's hosted in the cloud. They can get this on their phone, etc. I haven't worked with this too much, but that's kind of an overview. Clients will pay more for this. So it's kind of like a upsell type thing. And that's kind of it. So I got about 10 minutes if you guys want to ask any questions, or if you want me to just kind of speak in general of my experiences, or what, where you want to go from there.
You guys have questions? So a couple, I guess the whole, when we started the algorithmic trading a couple of years ago, you were very much at the forefront of that. And I think you're still, pushing that. If we don't have that class offered this semester, how would you recommend they get into trading, or not even trading, just learning Coursera, or what would you suggest that they do to pick up a language?
I see, that's the thing, is like when I was working with that, like I didn't even really know too much. The best way I learned was being forced to do it. Like I tried doing a lot of Coursera, Code Academy stuff, and that might work for some people. It didn't work for me. But once I got hired here and I was forced to go in and understand like how this was working, I picked it up a lot quicker. I would just say research some up and coming fintech firms. I don't know. There's really a ton of them in the space. I can give you a list later, but off the top of my head, I'm not too sure. But I would just get into these firms that are growing. Like I would really try and target firms, or at like departments of firms that seem to be growing. Like I personally, and people will disagree, and don't take my word for it. You do what you want to do, but I don't think traditional banking is the way to go. I think you really want to get into the intersection of finance and tech. And like, I see a lot of investment banking type stuff. Kind of, they're limiting their office, they're limiting their workforces. So I would look at more up and coming firms. That could be a simple LinkedIn search, just Googling and understanding the space a little bit more. And, there's trading system side, there's, analytics side. There's a couple, there's another company that I worked with that does a lot of cloud-based research platforms for these types of funds. But I would look at more like tech stuff, if that makes sense. And really, if you're not good at teaching yourself or like motivating yourself, get into a firm that will force you to learn it. I don't know too much, but I know basic kind of like syntax of JavaScript and how that interacts with each other. I don't code algorithms or anything like that. I just know how they connect, and I'm still learning it too. So don't be afraid if it's overwhelming, because it is for me right now. a lot of, I mean, my days are kind of just based on trying to pick stuff up as I go. It's kind of a fast-paced environment. So I definitely wouldn't, it's stressful, but it's, you know, you end up learning a lot. You end up picking stuff up a lot quicker. I mean, with this whole COVID thing, it's the workforce is going to change. So I wouldn't shy away from newer type of companies as long as you research them that might do remote work, or might be kind of in a different segment of the space that you wouldn't think of. I just personally don't think, I think a lot of the traditional banking is going away. They're looking to automate their operations, their back office, middle office. So if there's companies and softwares out there that are doing that, I would go work for them, or I would look into them rather than like what you would think of as traditional banking. But that's just me. I encourage you, if you have a great job offer at a good, well-named firm, I mean, there's no reason not to start there, because they do have a lot of resources, and there will be departments that do work in this stuff. But I would just, you know, wherever you go, I would just try and target some type of more tech focus, more of a tech focused, if I had to put a word on it.
Other questions? Any advice for people looking for internships this summer or anything? I mean, I'm guessing most of them are going to be virtual, but I mean, any suggestions at all in that area?
We already hired all our interns, and I'm not totally sure what the hiring quota is now, or what their policy is now. I know we were growing really quick and we did have a lot of jobs, but now I don't know. I've been home for a month and a half and I haven't been talking to any HR people. But always, like, just hit me up on LinkedIn, because I do know other people out here in Chicago, and so I could always kind of see what's out there. So definitely don't shy away. As far as internships, I don't know. I off the top of my head, there's not any that I know that are open, but I'll always reach out, and I always give contacts of other people I may know. I guess, like, in general, just find something you're interested in, and, you know, even if you can't get one, you know, projects, or I'll give you an example here. Before I joined this firm, I was interviewing at a cryptocurrency exchange, and they were all remote workforce. And it was a really big exchange too, and it's pretty well known, pretty well established. It was called Kraken. And basically the way the recruiter reached out to me, because it was remote, was she was in Europe, and they put you through like projects. So the interviews are like project based. So, you know, this was like more of a marketing their trading platform, kind of similar to Thinkorswim. And I had to go through and kind of like create like a marketing plan, or create like a content plan, like, you know, distributing through YouTube and Discord and Twitch, stuff like that. So, I mean, like, recruiters are going to be looking, they're not going to be looking at your education. They will look at your education, but more importantly, if you have like a portfolio or something that you can show, or some type of like, you know, something to back up your experience. If you don't have direct experience, that's pretty good. I mean, it could be something as simple as you created a rule for trading, or you created a visualization in SIMM on Excel, and you can kind of like attach that and show the recruiter. Like I said, these are a lot of these roles are going to become remote. So like, you're not going to be sitting down face to face. You'll be Skyping in, and like, you're going to need to differentiate yourself. So if you have a portfolio of stuff you've been working on and can show that, then like, that's, you know, that's probably the way to go, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you very much, Dan. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, well, thank you, and look forward to seeing this work. And also, at some point, we'll have to talk about the ESG stuff you're working on as well. I think that would be a good one. Yeah,
that's an interesting aspect. I'll put my contact information in the group message, and then anybody that wants to reach out, or, just feel free. I can't guarantee that I will know anyone, but I'm always willing to have a conversation and kind of guide you through. I mean, I know what that was like. So it's just kind of, this is a little bit different situation, but just kind of hang in there and think of how you can differentiate yourself. Don't think of how you can take advantage of this opportunity. There's a huge paradigm shift coming in this industry and in the working world in general. So take advantage of it. Don't look at it through the same lenses that other people might.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and we will be in touch. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep. Thank you, Dan.